Mme. Gondrée, why don't you want us to take any photos in here or filming in here?
It's a special home and shrine, which is a private home, but so full of history and memories, like you are in a chapel.
How do you see people come in here today?
They are pilgrims. 99% of them are pilgrims. So they respect the cafe. They also admire it because it's authentic. It has lived history, and they have the chance of meeting me and talking to me. It's not pretentious, but it's full of the living history, which is unique.
And how old were you when this liberation happened?
We were two little girls, and I was the youngest of the two, coming up to 4 years old.
And where were you at the time?
Well, we were moving about in the house because that's what we did. We had to survive with the parents. When it happened, after my father was warned not to move out of this house because something was imminent, then French children go to bed about the same time as their parents, which was quite late, because in June it's light very late.
Yeah.
So then we went upstairs. My father with Georgette in that quarter, and as a little girl, very small, I went with Mummy in the other quarter. So like that, the whole house was occupied by the family.
Did your parents know what was going to happen that night?
Yes, my father was warned. After my mother heard that the Germans were going to blow up the bridge, it was absolutely vital that the British arrived as quickly as possible. And so Daddy was warned 48 hours before it was due to happen. Monsieur, do not move out of this house, it's imminent.
And what is the first thing that you remember from that night or those days, first days?
I would like to put forward that it wasn't just the first day of when it happened, but also the fact that we had to live through the occupation, which was very difficult for two little girls and my parents to actually protect their two little girls. And there was very little money coming in, so we had to do with what we had. Then, of course, when my father was warned that something was imminent, it happened, and it was terrifying in the same way as we were terrified during the occupation, because the Germans were very brash and had to be aware of them. But when it happened, and then the noise was different, the crashing noise was different, then we were ushered in the cellar to lie on a mattress which was between the two sides of the house. No time to take warm clothes, the house in the dark, not to make the Germans aware of what was going to happen and where we had gone to. So it was a terrifying moment, and I was cold. We were lucky. And then my father left us for a second, went upstairs to see what he could see. He was almost shot, but fortunately the one who was aiming a gun did not shoot, but there was a corpse on the terrace. My father came down and reported to us what he'd seen, and he was very much in doubt that what he'd heard wasn't spoken by the Germans. And then we suddenly heard above our head the shutter being forced open, and then footsteps above our heads. So we thought the Germans were definitely coming in to get us, which was even more frightening. And I was cold. And so my father left us again for the second time, came up the little steps, opened the kitchen door, and there he was faced by two who said to him, "Monsieur, it's all right, we've arrived." So he brought them in the cellar, and it was a frightening sight, not having seen such figures before, and they were black-faced, and so I was very frightened and hid behind the barrel with Georgette. But because my mother started kissing them, and one of them took some chocolates and some biscuits out of his jacket, then I came forward, and he took me in his arm, perhaps because he'd left his little girl at home. And from that moment on, we were with the British soldiers. Daddy came up with Mummy and the two little girls, and we opened the door of of the cafe. By then there were casualties being brought in. The cafe became a field hospital where they would treat them, where here they would lie them on the table, on the floor, they were everywhere. And then into the kitchen, on the table there, where they would take the number of their tags, and into the dining room, which was the operating theatre. When my mother married Daddy, she was a trained nurse, and so she had the doctors in charge. The tremendous crushing noise was no more than the gliders, who came between the two bridges. And so out of that came a doctor, and then the surgeon, Colonel Bruce Harvey, very quickly came and operated. So it was a frightful sight, the cry, the smell, but we survived. We were with them from that moment on. The mission, naturally, of the ones who took bridges succeeded. But if it hadn't been for the ones who relieved, that is the 7th Battalion of the Parachute Regiment, and of the senior officer, they fought to get the Germans out of the village, they fought to get the Germans off the bridges, and they stopped them retaking. Because if they had retaken, then we would have been known to be friends of the British, and we would have been shot or taken to concentration camps. This is why this little house has become, from that moment on, a great treasure to them. We have been adopted by them, and we have adopted them. We have become their family, and they have become ours. My father, who was not a trained nurse, then said to the British soldiers who were digging their trenches, "Dig it up, it's all for you." And so they dug up the champagne, which my father had hidden from the Germans in the garden, and brought it out. And that's the reason why every year on the evening of the 5th, I give champagne to the returning soldiers, who are now very ancient in age, but we remember, and the young soldiers of today. At 23:16, 23:20, that is the time when we were liberated under the British Airborne Division under the command of General Gale. Because we were under German timing, so the time was different, and not 0:16 or 0:20.
Now you have been celebrating that for 75 years. How do you do that? How do you celebrate?
Well, I do it on the evening of the 5th, because it is a very strong moment. And in particular, to show that that champagne ceremony was started by the Gondrées. And naturally, at the time, I was with my sister Georgette, so 2 little girls. It's a unique tradition. And it is also before we go to Ranville Cemetery to pay our respect the next morning. The bridge was liberated by the 6th Airborne Division, the Red Berets, but then more came, as well as the Green Berets. And so General Gale's wish was, because the engineers called the bridge Pegasus Bridge on the 26th of June 1944, General Gale, in 45, when he came back, said to my father, "Next year, George, we'll put Pegasus Bridge to the Gondrée name, because the two symbols were liberated together." So this was a home and a shrine to them from that moment on. You know, they risked their life to give us the freedom. They were laughing, sprite. We would spend many hours together and very long nights, very short days. They're still young. Sadly, that is life. They are more and more in wheelchairs. They are more and more coming back, because one of them, they brought his ashes back, and it's actually around the cafe, because that's what they want. So the memories will always be kept. And my family, that is my son in particular, comes and helps me every 6th of June. My granddaughter is arriving in a week. So there's that continuity, because you have a family name above the door. So it is a treasure and well protected.